The Undercountry Music News is an excerpt of the weekly internet broadcast Undercountry Music, which features music from great country artists you won't hear on mainstream radio, as well as a roundup of the most interesting country music news of the week without all the fluff. To listen and subscribe to the full weekly episode, please visit undercountrymusic.com or simply subscribe to the Undercountry Music Podcast on iTunes. Let's get into it. You like that country-flavored music that doesn't sound like all the other garbage on the radio? That's why you come here, right? Because you're sick of what the industry is shoveling at you. You're tired, you're mad as hell, and you're just not going to take it anymore. Well, you came to the right place because I'm sick of it too. I've had enough of it. I don't make excuses for this industry that has treated us all like peons and completely taken advantage of us as their client for decade after decade after decade. And now they want us all to come and feel sorry for them that, you know, they don't have the easy ride that they used to have on us. Well, you know what? Good. Because the revolution will be podcasted. I'm going to keep saying it over and over and over and over again from the highest mountaintops, and I don't care who it pisses off. Because it is time for the Undercountry Music News. This is the part of the show where I go and I see what real news is out there in the Googleverse. You know the Googleverse. I type in the three little words country music news and I look for the one or two actual news stories on all the top Google search results. And I got a special treat for you now. Because this week, I'm not just going to stop at page 1 like I normally do. I actually now venture into page 2. And I don't bring you what every place is reporting on page 2 because that'd be way too much. But I look to see if there's anything on page 2 on the seedy underbelly side of what's being reported out there for country music news. For those who maybe didn't reach the highest highs on Google, they reach kind of like the next highest highs. But we're going to start at the top, baby, and work our way down into the gutter. You want to roll in the gutter with me too, right? Right. Well, hey, if you've never joined us here on Undercountry Music News, and why do I say us? Yes, I know why I say us, because it's you and me, and we're an us, right? I think of us as an us, because, you know, this is your show too. I wouldn't have a show if it weren't for you. Actually, I would. I'd sit here without even a microphone in front of me, and I'd babble all this crap into a cheaply painted beige color wall, which is what I'm doing right now. It's just that it's so much more satisfying when I talk into a microphone, and then I can hear the richness of what the microphone picked up in headphones. So not only is my ego inflated by having a show where I fool myself into thinking that people give a flying S about anything I have to say, but I talk into the microphone and it comes back into headphones, and I get to hear the glorious sound of my own voice in both my ears. Talk about mental masturbation. I got it going on here. Oh, by the way, if I go onto a website and they're in one of the top results and they're just mailing it in, I give them a special treat, like my dog. Except my dog wouldn't even like this treat because it is the Undercountry Music News Wet Belch of the Week. Sounds something like this. I liked what was on the end of that one. Disgusting yet satisfying. All right. We're going to start over at CMT, Country Music Television. Well, good one here. Good story about Dierks, Bentley, and a little cell phone footage from one of his concerts in New York. All right, let me paint the picture for you. A couple of girls are down in the front of the stage, and they showed up in airline stewardess costumes, and they were with some guy who is dressed like an airline captain. That's a little bit sexist, I guess, because, the girls were wearing shorty shorts, and, why is the guy the captain? I don't know. I think that's another discussion for another time, though, but, they thought it was cool, so Dierks pulls them up, all three of them, up on stage to help him sing the song Drunk on a Plane. Well, they, like the 2/3 breakdown, and, if you follow music very close, with the 2/3 breakdown is where, like, this formula in a lot of today's, I can't even say country songwriting, it's in a lot of songwriting, but country music plays everything to death, so I'll say country. That's where 2/3 of the way through the song, they take everything out except a little chorus with a lot of the music taken out, where they repeat the chorus, with just a drum beat behind it. It's called like a breakdown. Yeah, that's the 2/3 breakdown. Anyway, they were doing that, and one of the girls, dressed like a stewardess, turns around and vomits all over the stage. Now, the fan cell phone footage, which caught the spectacle, didn't actually catch the vomit, because when she started hurling, all kinds of people, all their heads got in the way of the camera shot. So you can't see the actual vomit, but you can see all of the spectacle that ensues from the crowd when it happens. And then the girl runs off stage, and all the people part like the Red Sea, and she's gone. And then Dirk looks around, sees this big pile of vomit, and he goes, "Because she puked on a stage." And there you go. I'll have more about that later on, because there's another story about that a little later on here. But that's some good stuff. But you can see this fan footage over at cmt.com in the news section. And there's the only other halfway interesting thing I found over at CMT was an article about Carrie Underwood and the songwriting process for Something in the Water, which, I found kind of interesting, sort of behind the scenes of, a Music Row songwriting session. Apparently, the music was kind of written already by the people she teamed up with, and she walked in and she had some ideas in a notebook. And she apparently carries a little songwriting notebook where, nothing's really fleshed out, nothing fully, but she just has whatever little ideas she has and flips through them and sees what fits where and just kind of lets it go with the flow. And that's sort of how it happened. Anyway, you can go kind of read all about that over at the news section of CMT.com. All right, moving along over to GAC, Great American Country. Rascal Flatts has announced a 9-show Las Vegas residency at The Joint, which I believe is inside the Hard Rock Hotel. The bar called The Joint. They're going to be playing little up-close and personal shows from late February through mid-March. And I think the tickets are just like something like $40. Well, before the service charges. And I think the service charges, they're not too bad. They're about like $300 or so, I would say. And if that doesn't make you toss your cookies, let's move on to Taste of Country. Now, Taste of Country has the Dierks Bentley follow-up commentary to the Vomitorium. And by the way, I learned a little something about Vomitorium. Apparently, it was ancient Greece, ancient Rome, I believe. They believed it was so decadent, and people would just eat rich food, and then when they ran out of room to shove it in their face, they'd go and vomit. They'd go to the vomitorium and vomit so that they could make room for more. Well, that's not actually what the vomitorium means. Vomitorium just means to spew forth. And they used it to describe the entrances to the Colosseum. because people would spew forth from the entrances to the Coliseum. So it really wasn't about people hurling. The things you learn when you're postcadiding with me, Neil Smith, on Undercountry Music. That wasn't a sign-off, by the way. Still going here. Okay, Dierks Bentley, he comments about the girl, said he did not even see the vomiting happen. It's just, he's up there singing. All of a sudden, the crowd starts, oohing and ahhing and going crazy about something. He turns around. That girl's gone. She sees her run through the crowd, which is all parting like the Red Sea in front of him, I guess because they don't want to get vomit on him. And he looks around and just sees vomit all over the place. And he says he'd love to see vomit again. I don't know why he wants to see vomit again. I mean, he says he'd seen, fist fights and blood and, flashing boobies, everything you could imagine playing live, but he's never seen anyone vomit the hell out of a stage. And now he has, and he says he's open to do that experience again. Now, apparently, this girl's mother called into a local radio station the following day and proclaimed publicly that her daughter had not been drinking and just got sick. Now, apparently, allegedly, there's been a photograph circulating on Twitter of this girl with an alcoholic beverage in her hand. That doesn't really say anything, but come on. Anyway, and Dierks said that he'd like to reach out to her to make sure she's all right. Probably kind of embarrassing, and now the whole thing's gone viral, and she probably didn't mean for it to go that way. Anyway, continuing on over at GAC, Great American Country, Trisha Yearwood talks about how crappy female country artists don't get treated as nicely by the industry as crappy male country artists. Also, how Reba really opened a lot of doors for female artists in the 90s, and how a lot of those doors have slowly been getting closed again over the past so many years. And she feels like with this new album she has out called Prize Fighter, she's got a pretty good fight on her hands, too, this go-round. Ding, ding, Trisha. Ding, ding. And keeping on over at Taste of Country, Garth Brooks, in an interview, says YouTube is the devil. He's really railing against all these online streaming platforms that don't pay hardly jack to the artists and their teams. And he's got a good point. And I say that. I don't want to keep beating this dead horse. But, and it's true. Artists and their teams should get a much, much better cut, because he's claiming that people get millions and millions of downloads and hardly get paid anything for it. And he is right. The amazing point. Now, I'm not going to argue that point. Now, where I do have issue with this is that these platforms like YouTube and Spotify, Pandora, and the rest, they have made it easier than ever before to reach millions and millions and millions of people with hardly any marketing dollars coming out of the artists or their teams. Now, should they be getting more money for their streams and downloads? Yeah, they should. But if you're reaching millions and millions and millions of people without hardly having to pay anything for your marketing, I think that if you're worth your salt as a marketing team, you ought to be able to figure out how to monetize that. If you can get your artists out in front of that many people, you've got to have some kind of sales funnel going on. That's business 101. You reach so many millions of people. What are their demographics? What do they have in common? What do they buy? What do they look for? And then you make products around your artists that you then sell to them. And don't sit here and give me all this crap. Well, an artist should make music and sell music, and that's their product. Well, you know what? The music's not the product anymore. In the beginning of the recording industry, the music wasn't the product. It was the players that were the product. I think where this is all headed, now that the money is getting sucked out of the industry, I mean, look, Pepsi pays $1 gajillion to be on the Super Bowl, right? Garth Brooks can get a corporation in front of millions and millions and millions of his followers. You see where I'm going with this? And it's already happening. Corporations are backing major tours, things like that. You know, Pepsi, Budweiser, what have you. You know, Ford trucks on the Toby Keith tour. You get the idea. So, I mean, what's going to happen is that's now that, you know, you can't actually sell the music. I believe that product placement is going to become more prevalent than ever before. I don't know if you remember, but back in the 90s, the Pepsi jingle actually got worked into a Janet Jackson song. She was the spokes artist for Pepsi at the time, and that was back in the 90s. And sort of the Always the Real Thing, that melody was worked into one of her songs. And you know, and stupid people couldn't tell the difference. But I think you're going to start seeing a whole lot more of that. I think, corporations and products are going to start appearing in popular music. And I'm not sure that it's going to work either. But what I do think is going to work is something like what Kenny Chesney's been doing, or, you know, maybe Sammy Hagar. I mean, Sammy Hagar has his line of tequila, which is very popular. Kenny Chesney has his own brand of rum. These artists that are thinking outside the box are using their celebrity and their exposure, you know, and figuring out what do their followers enjoy, and they're packaging themselves and they're selling that. And, you know, I think if it's done the right way, it doesn't have to detract from the artist, as long as they're selling something that is complementary to them, and not just selling something to be selling something, like, you know, like Toby Keith selling milk, or, you know, something that just makes no sense. But, you know, Toby Keith could sell cowboy hats, a line of boots, you know, bandanas, things like that. And I'm sure he does, but, or like get creative with other products and things like that. There's money to be made, and all these dollars that they're not spending reaching millions of people because these platforms are doing it for them. That's money in their pocket. Hello. We're not that stupid. Well, I mean, a lot of us are, because a lot of us are buying this sob story from these major artists, and it's just crap. Now, the people being put on the short shrift, I will say, are things like the songwriters and the producers and things like that. You know, they got to get paid. But, you know, they're basically, you know, maybe the point system will go away, and these people will just be nothing more than the same as commercial artists, people who write jingles for commercials. I don't know, are there points and stuff? I'm not really in that space, but maybe it'll all go to flat fee. I don't know. I'm just talking out my butt right now, but I don't think YouTube's the devil. I think they just underpay. But what you get on the flip side of that, you know, I think the onus is on the artist more than ever before. And that's sort of where it all boils down. The onus is now back to the artist and their team, and no one else. You know what? There's money to be made. You just got to figure it out, because the old model no longer works. But there's a great new frontier out there to be grabbed. And I, for one, I welcome that, because the revolution will be podcasted. Over at Country Weekly, Randy Owens from Alabama is lamenting the lack of bands in country music these days. You know, because country music, by and large, it's just a bunch of solo artists who run around with, you know, session players behind them, and it's really sucking a lot of the creativity and life out of the music, because it's just canned. You got the same group of people that all play the same way and make the same sounds because it's a formula that works. And, you know, it's really sad that there aren't more bands going on these days. Probably, you know what, the closest thing, we have okay, let's pull back here a little bit. A band, you're going to have a more unique sound. Probably the closest thing we have is like the Zac Brown band right now, because that's an actual band. But I even am shy about saying that because, look whose name is on it. You can call it a band all day long. They're a team and everything, and I'm sure they keep the same players and all that. But at the end of the day, there's one man in that group whose name is on the front of that band. And although they put the word band behind it, I still consider the Zac Brown band to be a solo artist. Although, I will say that the individual members get highlighted really well. Like when he does his fests and things like that, the individual members get to go out and play that with their own groups and things like that. So, they're given a wonderful platform. But at the end of the day, the Zac Brown band is the Zac Brown band. Make no mistake about it. Say maybe the next closest thing we have is Rascal Flatts, which is almost a band. It's 3 guys and 2 of them play instruments, but they're basically surrounded by a bunch of session players. And most of the footage I had, I think like all the guitar solos and stuff are played by the session guys. I don't really follow Rascal Flatts that closely because I don't really get into the whole modern crappy country sound. Although I got to say, Rascal Flatts is certainly a hell of a lot better than a lot of this junk floating around on the airwaves today. And every once in a while I'll hear a song from them that ends up being a guilty pleasure of mine. And I'm not above telling you that. But, I got to tell you, I'm right there with Mr. Randy Owen on this one. And let's have a peek over at Rolling Stone Country now, who have climbed nicely in the Google search results. The only real interesting thing I found over at Rolling Stone Country was another article on Trisha Yearwood talking about her new Prize Fighter album, but she also goes into more about how it was coordinated with the release of Garth's new album, and so that they could tour together and be together as husband and wife rather than have a marriage where they're always apart from each other. So that's kind of cool that they coordinated all like that. I did, and she's also, she's got her feelings about Spotify and YouTube and everything pretty much, right in line with the way Garth feels. I don't know if it's as severe or not. I don't know the inside of her brain. I'm not in there. But one thing that I did find very, very interesting, I went on to Spotify and I found all of the latest Garth Brooks songs on Spotify and the back catalog on Spotify. You know what I did not find on Spotify? Trisha Yearwood Prize Fighter is something I did not find on Spotify. And that's like her latest single. Very interesting. I did find Trisha's back catalog of music on Spotify, but not the new stuff. It's not up there, but Garth's is. And I don't really know if I have a point on that or not. It's just I found it interesting. Maybe you do too. Maybe you don't. There you go. And also over there at Rolling Stone Country, they're talking about Tanya Tucker's new exhibit at the Country Music Hall of Fame, which is going to run through May of 2015. And one of the highlights of this exhibit is a pink motorcycle, which was presented to her by Harley Davidson in the early 90s. Why? I have no frickin' idea. But it's there. And it's sitting over at the Country Music Hall of Fame right now, so you can just get your little Delta Dawn on over there and flower on at the Tanya Tucker exhibit. Okay, it's time to dial in to the 615, which is the area code for Nashville and surrounding areas, but it's also the subsection of Billboard.com, where they focus on country music and the country music news. And there's an interesting article over there where Kenny Chesney is sharing his thoughts on the bro country movement, the objectifying of women in country music, how he's not really down with it, but fully admits that he was a lot more prone to do it in his past, but that's just kind of not where his head's at these days. And I found it an interesting read. Also talks about, how he used to have a lot of island property in the Virgin Islands, and he's pretty much sold most of that off because it's not quite the serene place it once was, because, he walks around and everyone's able to take his picture with their phones these days, and, and how he's just got one left and he doesn't disclose that location. But more than that, I found it more interesting about the business side of what he does. He talks about, like his line of rum that he sells, which I think is brilliant. I'm not going to recap that because I already talked about it, but I just think that's brilliant that someone's thinking outside the box and they have a product there behind. Now, he does say he invested $20 million into this line of rum. That sounds a bit extreme to me. I don't know how smart that sounds, but I do think it's smart that artists, build a product line, and and especially something that's consumable, that people might like and they can keep buying over and over and over and over again. I think that's just brilliant, and I think that's the way to think outside the box in today's age of music. You got to be selling something. You got to be selling something that people will come back and buy again and again and again. And that's where some of the smarter ones are capitalizing on all this free publicity that they get from YouTube and Spotify and that reach that it gives you. That's where it's at. I mean, corporations pay big money for this reach. Why do these old artists not get it? I don't know. It's just like the people who used to work in the car factories making $35 an hour to put in one bolt over and over and over again for 10 hours a day with a huge pension and all that. Stuff like that, it doesn't last forever. And, you should just be thankful that you had that ride while you had it, because it just doesn't work like that anymore. All right, let's go kick it at theboot.com. I think this week they're the burp.com. Because they got the undercountry music news wet belch of the week. Eat my pork salad. Not poke salad. It's pork salad, baby. Gonna make me gack? I will take you to the Gab. The Nashville Gab. Let's see what's happening over at Nashville Gab. Nashville Gab's got a little story over there where Toby Keith's talking about how his daughter Crystal is being wooed by some producers out in Hollyweird to produce a TV show around her in some way, somehow. And the producers don't even really have a clear idea what they want to do, but they're taking her out there and they're going to see what's shaking. Toby's saying, maybe just have a thing where, they follow her and her girlfriends around backstage, or maybe a cooking show, or who the hell knows. But, here, let me read you a quote, though. And, boy, taken out of context, this could really sound bad. Let's see, what does he say here? But I told them they should do her and her girlfriends backstage. Quote, unquote, from Toby Keith. I'm sure that is not meant in the way that my perverted mind is making it sound. And thank God for that. And we're going to drift on over to the page 2 of the Google search results now. And that's where I'm just going to skim real quick and see if I find anything interesting on the CD underbelly. And here's what I'm finding. Over at Country Music Tattletale, they have something really interesting. And really, really interesting. They have the entire 54-minute concert by Eric Church performing for Austin City Limits. You can watch the whole thing. Just click it. It makes you sit through a 60-second Budweiser commercial. Then it only shows you the concert for like a couple of minutes. Then it says you have watched a sample. Click here to see more. So I click there to see more, and it takes me to the PBS website, where it then makes me choose who the local affiliate station for PBS is. I chose Nashville. And then it picked up from where it cut me off and then let me watch the rest of the concert. Oh, after making me sit through another 60-second Budweiser commercial, which was the exact same 60-second Budweiser commercial I just saw a few minutes ago. So that was a little irritating to the point where I wanted to, find them and take a flamethrower to their national headquarters. But once I got past that, it's the whole dang Eric Church concert. I mean, how can you go freaking wrong? For the price of a couple minutes of annoyance, you get an hour-long concert. I'll take that deal any day, and it's a pretty good deal. All right, and I got one more thing over there in the world of country music news. Perez Hilton has a country music page. Well, I say that kind of tongue-in-cheek because it starts off with a story about Taylor Swift, who hasn't cut a country song in 5 years. But he also redeems himself very immediately. She redeems himself with the lyric video for Dolly Parton's Blue Smoke, which is frickin' awesome. And another great reason to go over there to Perez Hilton's country music news page. Anyway, this has been your Under Country Music News. Thank you for listening to the Undercountry Music News. The Undercountry Music News is just a small excerpt of the weekly hour-long internet broadcast Undercountry Music, where I play music and have great interviews by lesser-known original country acts. Get on over to undercountrymusic.com where you can listen and subscribe. Stay under, stay country.